And a hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 86 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this snowy Monday. The trucks are still clearing shit behind me as we speak. But if you're catching episode 86 on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment if you feel like you should comment. Agree with me, disagree, doesn't matter, it's all good. And don't forget to turn on those notifications, or if you're catching episode 86 on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, flip on those notifications. So today I'm going to focus on another On This Day, but not a movie on this day, at least not in this episode right now. On this day 32 years ago, I suffered an all-encompassing anxiety attack. A massive failure of multiple systems of my functioning human body. Physiology just more or less short-circuited on me. And I also want to speak to something that we see a lot, not just on social media, but social media is ever present. And bear in mind, I am part of the generation, and this is something we see a lot of. There was no social media in 1992 when I was in my final half year of high school. There was peer pressure, 100%. You don't smoke weed, you're this, you're that. Don't do coke, just say no. People getting drunk at keggers, bonfires. That stuff happened, hits different now. And one thing that I believe is very important to express my feelings on, because I don't like telling anybody what to think or how to feel. I do think that sharing one's experiences and maybe relating them to something that people go through now might be helpful. But I am a little bit distressed from a broad standpoint, the idea that this generation of young people, so let's say we're talking about an 18-year-old, somebody who is the exact same age, the story I'm going to relate to you. Now, that would be a young person born in probably 2005. And the idea that this generation of young people, they're soft, they're lazy, they're entitled, they never get off their phone. Now, they never get off the phone part, you're not going to get any argument. That's just the way that it goes. But entitled, lazy, spoiled, difficulty connecting because they never get rid of their phone, also true. But I don't believe there is anything fundamentally wrong with your average 18-year-old of today versus your average 18-year-old back then. But I don't like the idea that we should condemn those who are hurting. I think that young men, especially in this instance, should be encouraged to come forward if they're scared, if they have very serious anxiety, if they're prone to panic attacks, as I was from the time I was 10 years old. Now, I was in therapy, I was treated for all those years, but I was still prone to getting panic attacks, and I had not properly learned how to interact with others. I needed help. And the fear that I have for younger people is because there is so much exposure and there is this notion that you got to suck it up, buttercup. Now, there are times that you do. There are times that you have to step up to the plate, that you need to overcome your fear 100%, as I did. But 18-year-old me needed help and did not get the right kind of help. And that is something that I'm not going to back down from. That's a hill I'll die on. Any 18-year-old kid, it doesn't have to be a guy. It could be anybody. We've seen people hurting and getting made to feel small and insignificant and inconsequential in current climates on social media. Cyberbullying, that's all real. And I reject the idea that, well, some kids just should grow a spine or get tough. Or if somebody were to tell me that social anxiety disorder, that's not a real medical condition, fuck you. Because I lived it and I know what it feels like for a young person to be scared shitless, not understand why they're so scared. Bro, all you have to do is talk to her. Yeah, no shit. You try interacting with somebody when your heart is pounding 220 beats a minute and you're hyperventilating and can't stop yourself from hyperventilating. You tell me how to handle that. How do you tough that out? The answer is you don't. You can't. I put myself as a younger person into a situation. I tried to do that. I tried to pretend, well, this isn't real. This isn't real. My brain and my body couldn't tell the difference. And ultimately, what happened is something that should not happen to anyone. Nobody should have to go through that. People need to discuss their feelings. As lame and pathetic as that is, yeah, we're creating a nation of weak men. Fuck you. Fuck you. Again, not true. We need to create a nation of people who can talk, who can express themselves without fear of being ridiculed. And this is something I'm very, very strongly about and have been, because I was lucky. I've told people how many different times have I come on here, and people who know me, even going back many years, I am the luckiest SOB you will ever know. Because I had parents who cared, even though we all had our ups and downs, and my dad and I, may he rest in peace, my mom had my ups and downs with her, but I had people who cared, and people who tried to get me the best care. They did not turn a blind eye to me. Well, he'll figure it out on his own. No, I was not going to figure it out on my own. And somebody with my exact characteristics, you take me at 18 and you cross the space-time continuum and you plant him in 2024, he is permanently fucked. Because he would have had no one to talk to, because even though I was seeing a therapist, I was not able to express myself properly. I needed more help. And I didn't get that more help until I was in my 20s. But the point is, I got it, and I learned, without it being called behavior modification, without it being called, I was sort of not resistant to fear. I was resistant to taking risks. I had to be slow. I had to slowly court rejection, court disaster, court failure. I had to small scale fail. And as I failed small scale, I slowly gained confidence. My brain began to learn, like Terminator 2, a neural net computer. The more I'm exposed to normal human interaction, the more I learn. Well, that's what happened to me. But I needed the reps, as we say. I needed the practice. I needed people to listen and understand that I wasn't acting this way to be an asshole or be different. I was acting this way because it was in my DNA, and it needed to be changed. It needed to be shifted. And fortunately, ultimately, it was. I have been able to have a normal life the last 15 years. That if you had met me at 18, hell, if you'd met me at 30, you would have said, this guy's fucking helpless. I still needed the reps. I needed people to hear me. I needed to not be afraid to tell people what I was thinking and what I was going through for fear of being thought of as weak, ineffectual, pussy, fuck that guy. So here's the story of February 13th, 1992. And here's something also with therapy. You can't skip steps. You have to walk before you can run. And that is a cliche and something we still hear. It's not said as often as it was when I was a much younger person, but it's absolutely true. And what I did, my mistake, was skipping those steps, was counting on the fates to guide me through, even though I knew deep down I couldn't. It wasn't going to happen. I tried and I failed. I needed time. I needed time to grow. And I developed very slowly. Very, very slowly, relative to other people. Hey, some people just got it. And we see this in movies and in pop culture. And there are certain movies going back to the 60s, the 70s, with young people where they've got it figured out. As far as, here's what I'm going to major in college. I got my college girlfriend here, or boyfriend, or sweetheart, whatever it is. We're going to get married. We're going to have kids. and they have it together. And then there are the movies where the young people don't have it together. And sometimes that's the most compelling, when somebody who has a lot of talent is a little unfocused and doesn't know what they're going to do. I would have fallen into that category. So in the words of Jack Nicholson, to cut past the chase and get to the outcome, the Cliff Notes version of this story of February 13, 1992 is I had been a massive underachiever all through middle school and high school. I was a gifted and talented child, a boy with a high IQ who seemed to have an unusual aptitude for math and for memory. Nowadays, they would have put me on the autism spectrum by the time I was 5, and I would have probably gotten better care. That doesn't really matter today. But I had a lot of difficulty interacting with others, and I had a bad attitude. That doesn't help. If you're struggling to get along with people, don't be a dick on top of that. That is a universal message we can agree on, right? Don't be an asshole. Well, I had a terrible attitude. I was prone to panic attacks. Anxiety was overwhelming. And I was not a nice person on top of that. I wanted to be. I had not seen seen a young lady socially as of the beginning of my senior year in high school. I'd had crushes, but much the way that people of both sexes, of any gender identity, this doesn't change. Everybody is afraid to be rejected. It's a question of, are you able to function, or are you not able to function in terms of trying to form friendships and interpersonal relationships? And my issue was, I was unable to function. And you want to throw some sexual connotations in there, I don't really give a shit now. You can. I could not function socially, therefore I had no hope for a sexual existence. I thought it was permanent. So at the beginning of my senior year in high school, I was overweight, still had a terrible attitude, and I made a decision, and I did touch on this in a previous podcast about the so-called fitness journey, but I made a decision I was going to try to become a healthier person overall. I was going to stop being such a dick all the time. I was going to try to become healthier physically, and if you want to say spiritually, I wouldn't have called it that, but I was seeking enlightenment in my way, in my angry September 1991 way. I was seeking spiritual growth on top of intellectual and physical change. And so I started exercising more. I lost a lot of weight very quickly, and many people who knew me growing up will remember this, that what appeared to be almost overnight, I went from somebody who seemed significantly overweight to a guy who pretty much looked like everyone else in a very short amount of time. And that is true. I did not have a physiological condition in terms of thyroid, which I now have to take thyroid medication, but my systems in that regard were functioning properly. I lost a lot of weight, and then I was blindsided by a crush on a young lady that I knew a little bit. We had been in a cappella choir, we had spoken a few times, but this was the kind of devastating infatuation. It doesn't happen that often. And generally speaking, it happens when you're really young. In my case, I was 17 going on 18. Maturity-wise, I was probably about a 10 or an 11-year-old kid. Looked like an adult, right? Turned 18 on December 29, 1991. I could have enlisted in the military. In some states, I could have started smoking or drinking, right? I didn't drive yet. I developed this crush, and I found that anytime I attempted to talk to the object of my desire, I ran into a brick wall. Psychologically, emotionally, mentally, physically, I could not close the distance. In every iteration of the phrase, close the distance, I could not close the distance because the nerves were too much. And the easiest way to explain it is, in any normal situation, you throw 50-year-old me into a social setting where, for example, there are people of all ages, all creeds, and you say, Jerry, you have 1 hour to get 5 phone numbers of people in this setting. Now, I would be very confident that now I would be able to do it without any difficulty. You put me at 18 into that setting, even though we're not talking about asking a girl out, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would have started panicking. I would have been sweating profusely, and after 5 minutes, I would have tapped. So I went through this stretch where I went from being able to actually communicate with this person in a friendly, hey, how you doing? Just normal stuff that not even kids do that now. See someone every morning at the gym. Oh, hey, good to see you, Joe. Hey, Jer. Like that. Because I now wanted her, suddenly I was struck dumb, mute, scared out of my mind. My limbs started shaking anytime I attempted to gulp. Now I can't do it. So this carried on for a number of months, from late September 1991. And the turn of the year, nothing. Wasn't able to ever even say hello. And it's so stupid, out of context, right? I had established that I was on hello terms. You know, I wasn't breaking any rules. It wasn't like, oh, he just wants to fuck her. That's why he's saying hi. Nobody was saying that to me. There was no peer pressure in this context, nothing. Nobody had anything to say. And when I told friends and even some random acquaintances, I got a crush on, nobody, it's not like I was under the gun here. Nobody was putting a squeeze on me. Nobody was making me feel humiliated or embarrassed for this. The people around me were actually supportive. And as I said, I had not been the nicest person, but I had a lot of people, and the sense was they were rooting for me. So that's good. That would help anybody now. So roll the clock forward a little bit more, and I'm beginning to see the writing on the wall, and that is making it worse. And by the writing on the wall, to be specific, in this era, you knew people who you knew, and when, for example, school ended, you went your separate ways. You didn't, well, I'm following them on the gram anyway. No, there is no gram. The only gram is maybe your grandma, or a gram of Coke, if you want to go that route, or weed. There's no social media. There was very little in the way of cell phones. 1992 era cell phones? Were they this big? Maybe that big, fully extended. Not that many people had them. You used to see guys on the train every once in a great while talking on the phone, and they had about 10 minutes of battery power. They had to keep it plugged in all the time. The tech really wasn't that great in 1992. So, the writing's on the wall. The clock is ticking. I need to do something other than pine away silently, stare at her soulfully and mournfully in class. We had one class together, 8th period, contemporary media. And I used to just stare at her. Bro, what the fuck, man? Just go over and say hi. Well, I can't. I can't do it. That's me talking to myself. I didn't like being this way. I didn't want to be this way, but I was this way. Was not able to interact in a normal fashion. Whenever I tried to talk to her, I was petrified. I clam up, start shaking, book. So what was either a great idea, well, it was a great idea, but I didn't have any way to execute. Sometime in early February, I said, fuck this, metaphorically. I said, I'm going to put myself in a game situation, and I am going to do this, and I'm going to get this done. I'm tired. I can't be this pathetic 100% of the time. So I did something very old school, and this was old school. This is now 32 years ago. This is a long time ago. You think of it this way. That buffoon that I was in February of 1992, 32 years before that was February of 1960. Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris's race for Babe Ruth was only 30 and a half years prior. 1960. The Yankees hadn't even blown the 1960 World Series 32 years earlier than February of 1992. That is how long ago this is, right? I wrote this young lady a love letter handwritten, and my handwriting sucks. I bought a nice little box of chocolates, and as luck would have it, she was on the high school basketball team. The master plan, I was going to give her the letter and box of chocolates after the game that night. Great idea. So old school, so romantic, so sickly, saccharine, sweet. But deep down, I knew I did not have the wherewithal to pull it off. I knew I was setting myself up for disaster. I was walking myself to my own metaphorical doom. So the night of February 13th, 1992, 3 friends of mine picked me up. I didn't drive yet. We drove over to Massapequa High School. We sat in the bleachers and watched the girls' basketball team play a game against another school. I don't remember the school. But I do remember the moment, the moments, and I remember the horror of what happened, which was that when the time came for me to get up and walk across the gymnasium floor to give this young lady the box of chocolates and the love letter the night before Valentine's Day, I was hit with the most intense anxiety attack that I had ever had. And I had had some crippling ones as a younger person where I thought I was dying. This was worse. I began to hyperventilate without even being aware that I was drawing too much air. I was on the bleachers and I could not breathe. I was sitting there grasping desperately at the bleachers with my mouth open, trying to breathe. And in those desperate seconds, I remember thinking, fucking moron. How fucking stupid could you be to think you could do this? What the fuck? F. I cursed myself out in a 3-second span about 50 times in an endless melange of self-immolation. But what I was feeling was not imaginary. I thought I was dying because I could not breathe. And I sat there for 10 seconds trying to breathe. My lungs had simply, they shut down. That's how scared I was. I tried to skip all of the steps. Now the warning signs should have alerted me to the fact that this was the only outcome here. There is no rising to the occasion. There is no show some guts. This was foretold. This was the outcome that was logical based on everything I knew. But I tried anyway. They had to carry me out of the gymnasium. And I don't mean literally like this, but my knees were so weak. After about 10 seconds, one of my friends grabbed the box of chocolates and the letter and took it over to her. That was a really nice thing. When I stood up, I fell down. I fell down. My knees shut off. My body was in such distress that entire systems had stopped working. That is how terrifying a full-blown anxiety attack can be. They're not all the same. This was the worst one I ever had. Standing up and essentially dropping like a boxer getting hit across the jaw, where essentially brain shuts off. Well, my brain wasn't shut off. My body was shutting off. So my friends helped me out of the gym, got me into the car, literally got me into the car. They had to support my weight. I never ended up interacting with the object of my desire. That night confirmed it for me. I should have done anything other than that. But I tried. And that was the end result, was a full-blown anxiety attack. And I'm glad that nobody recorded it, because that's the kind of thing that somebody had recorded that for posterity. This is this is the most pathetic thing we've ever seen. You know, we don't need no sympathy votes here. I just needed to be able to not feel that way. I had needed practice. I had needed reps. I didn't get it. But what happened there, what I felt, what people go through when they have anxiety attacks is real. And anybody who says it's all in your head, fuck you. G to the F to the Y. Yeah, it's in your head. No shit. The best way to explain it is like this. Everyone gets nervous. In a normal situation, for example, 50-year-old me meets a young person, maybe even a woman my age, maybe a woman older. Doesn't matter the age. When you ask somebody out, can I get your phone number? You're going to be nervous. Everyone is. Even Brad Pitt at age 25. I guarantee you he had moments where he was shaken up. You know, 1987, 88 Brad Pitt. He was in this terrible horror movie called Cutting Class. He got to deliver a famous line, "There's blood everywhere." Even that guy would get nervous. Lady killer. George Clooney, doesn't matter. We all get nervous. But if you can imagine it this way, a normal nervous response to asking someone out when you don't know if they're going to say yes, or you don't know if you're even going to get a phone number. On a scale of 1 to 10, a normal nervous response would be a 5, in my opinion. Call it a 5. It's not earth-shattering. You'd be more scared if you fucked up at work and wondered if you were going to get fired. That might be a 7 or an 8. Just asking somebody for their number, or asking somebody, would you like to maybe meet? Would you like to go for sushi sometime? Something as tame as that. It seems so simple now, doesn't it? Well, back then, it was climbing Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen and without fixed ropes. It was flying without a net for someone like me, even though anybody would say, and people did say, the stakes aren't as high as you're acting. This is not nearly as big a deal as you are making it out to be. I'm not making it out to be. Something up here is making it out to be. So what was supposed to be a nervous reaction of a 5. Now, something like the Valentine's Day setup would be more than a 5. That would be probably a 7 or an 8, but still not on the level of fucking up at work and thinking you're going to get fired, or forgetting to study for a big exam and thinking you failed it. The idea is that anything up to 8, you should be able to manage it. My problem was that a nervous response of 5, what should have been 5, I was having an 8.5 or a 9. So when I got to something that was legitimately a 7, it was off the charts. And that's what sank me. Because the meter was fucked up. The gauge was not clicking correctly. And it wasn't until years later where the therapists finally started to get what was going on. Dr. Fox, started seeing him in my mid-20s. He's the one who finally, he was the 3rd therapist that I saw. He pinpointed it. He said, did anybody ever tell you you have social anxiety disorder? No, nobody ever said that. They just said I was really shy. I said, well, yeah, you're shy, but no, you have an actual condition. You have a condition. But it can be massaged. It can be worked on. It can be worked through. And he was the one who suggested take small steps. And so the slow exposure to terrifying incidents. To be more specific, not starting with immediately asking out the first, pretty woman that I saw at the gym, but just try to interact, Jared. Say hi. Say hi. Just say hi. Hey, are you doing elliptical later? Maybe we can do cardio together. Nowadays that would be a big thing. It might be recorded. Bro is trying to steal my man's girlfriend. Whatever. It was still a safe time. Late 90s, early 2000s, where you weren't going to be recorded and end up on TikTok looking like a clown. But these little victories, Dr. Fox encouraged me, just give it a try, Jared. And I was resistant at first. I was telling him, it doesn't matter. I know I'm going to fail. No, you don't, Jared. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. My whole life tells me that I am doomed to fail. No, it doesn't. No, yes, it does. Will you try? Please. Okay, Doc, I didn't mean to get angry. No. It's all right. Believe me, I understand your frustration. Try. It took me from the point of starting to see Dr. Fox when I was 26. It took me another 7.5 years before I reached a point where I was out on a date which ended in something other than a friendly hug. Not that there's anything wrong with friendly hugs. The healing power of a hug is real. I'm not anti-hug. But I was already 33 years old when I had my first intimate experience with another person. I was 33 and a half. I developed very slowly. I didn't have the proper tools to develop. Now, there's no way to reboot the matrix and see if I had had a Dr. Fox when I was 13, 14, 15. I feel like it would have helped. There's no guarantee that I would have been any different because I was angry. I had a bad attitude. That was all real. It couldn't have hurt. But the takeaway here, social anxiety disorder is real. Brain playing tricks on the body, body playing tricks on the brain is real. This is not a fiction. And encouraging young people, boys, girls, anyone, to open up, to talk to someone, because I'm a big believer in therapy. A big believer in therapy. I don't see it as bullshit or nonsense. And I'm not talking about psychoanalysis because there are those, there are people who think psychoanalysis is gobbledygook. Or in the words of Tony Soprano, I don't want to have sex with my mother. I'm not talking psychoanalysis. I'm talking regular psychotherapy where you do, meaning the patient, does most of the talking and the doctor offers occasional bursts of potential knowledge that you can use. I'm a big believer in that. I would recommend that any kid going through this shit, going through tough times, scared all the time, if you can have somebody to talk to, it can only help. It can only help. But in general, you have to be able to open up and not be afraid to be looked down upon because you're sharing your emotions, because you're being open and honest about your fears, wondering, am I ever going to be able to do this? And that's the thing. Because I couldn't see a successful finish line, I didn't see the point in trying. And it wasn't until I got older and began to experience even minor successes, having normal friendships with women. So I didn't have any of those. I had friends when I was in college. But after that, there were years between making genuine friends. And I'm being serious when I say that, not the When Harry Met Sally. People I trusted, came to care for in an entirely platonic way. But it showed that I had the ability to interact properly. I needed practice. I needed someone to talk to direct me the right way. And I finally needed to be accepting of other people's help. There's so much that goes on in the mind of a allegedly gifted and talented kid. When you go through your teens, everything seems bad. Even the teens that are getting it done out there, whether it's academically, sports, relationships, friendships, it's still not easy. Being able to talk and being receptive of information coming your way. So much, for example, of what we see on social media, we initially dismiss it. And then there are things, there's so much wisdom out there. Just have to know where to look for it sometimes. I've gotten so much more out of life here 32 years to the day later than that scared kid ever imagined. Because I started to listen and I started to open up. And those two things enabled me to move the needle. It wasn't fast, and we talk about how now we are in a now culture of now. We want things yesterday. I hate to say we don't want to work for it, because plenty of people work their tails off in every iteration of that phrase. But when it comes to the mind and our physiology and hormones not necessarily firing exactly the way we want them to, we have to be patient. And I wasn't patient with myself. And it set me back. It really set me back. And then I wasn't patient when I was in college, and that set me back. So the best phrase that I can offer to you, well, there's two. One is, yard by yard, life is hard. Inch by inch, life's a cinch. For sure. That's a good one. But the other one is, make haste slowly, which means move quickly, but understand there are things that will take time, maybe even years. But when you're 18, you've got that kind of time. If I had never been accepting of help, if I had never opened up to potential ridicule, but opened up in a way that allowed help to come my way, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would not have had the extraordinary life experiences that I have got to have in the last decade and a half of my life. And I am, as always, humbled and eternally grateful to the people in my life who actually had my back and who looked out for me and who were excited when they saw that I was actually turning a corner. He's not what he was. He's different. I always had it in me. I just didn't believe it. And then suddenly, a whole new world opened up. Doesn't mean I don't get scared. Doesn't mean I still don't have moments where I'm a little shaky. But on the whole, fear doesn't define me. Not anymore. And with that, we've reached the end of episode 86 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast on this day, 1992. If you've caught episode 86 on the YouTube channel and haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you're maybe in the car listening to my reverie on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or iHeartRadio, haven't done so already, click like, subscribe, turn on those notifications. I'll actually be back with another, I don't know, I'll call it an episode, but I'll be back with another video real soon. I think many of you, especially Gen Xers, are going to enjoy it. But until then, peace.